I definitely want to hear them. So just let me know. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Brother Lucian Metellus. I'm the immediate past Eastern Regional Vice President, former District Director of New York, and also served as the General Organization Parliamentarian under Brother Marcus Tillman. So today we're gonna, and I'm gonna share my screen in a minute, but today we're gonna just go over parliamentary procedure. And brothers, let me know when you can see my screen. All right, brothers. So what I want to make sure that we get out of this presentation, what we get out of this presentation is we're able to, one, effectively understand parliamentary procedure and run an effective meeting, and also talk a little bit about committees. So I'm going to start with my presentation. And once again, thank you, Brother District Director, for allowing me to present to the Brothers of Jersey. So what you'll get out of this workshop is an understanding of Robert's Rules of Order, our basics, right? How you should prepare for your chapter meeting, how reports should be delivered, good meeting habits, and how committees operate. There are some other things that we'll talk about, but these are applicable to your chapter level and your district level activities. So there'll be some information, and what I will do is I'll share this with Brother District Director. I'll email him a copy of this to give out to the brothers. First, this is how most bros feel in chapter meeting, right? One of my favorite things to say is alphas love to argue and not be heard. So part of the problem at Alpha Phi Alpha is that we constantly talk to the brick wall. And Robert's Rules of Order is actually a tool that's allow all brothers to have a voice and be able to participate in discussions. So, you know, when I see brothers really get heated and have personal conversations, I want them to think about using Robert's Rules of Order as kind of a segue to kind of overcome some of these issues. So let's go through a history of Robert's Rules of Order. Where did it come from? It's actually written by Henry Martin Robert, who was an engineering officer in the Army. He was presiding over a church meeting and realized he did not know how. And he was extremely embarrassed by that. Ultimately, he discovered a few books that were available to him on the subject. He was able to kind of develop a parliamentary shell around it. And that's what we now know as Robert's Rules of Order. So out of this chaos came Robert's Rules of Orders. And I'll be honest with you, brothers, most organizations, whether it's NPHC, churches, businesses, large organizations, they're actually improperly using Robert's Rules of Order. So today we're going to try to cover and see and look at certain things. Any questions, brother? Are there any general questions that you have before I move on? All right. Hearing none. This is actually Henry Martin Robert, the person that wrote Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order is how meetings are run in Alpha, no matter what level that you're at. You're at a college chapter meeting all the way to the general convention, alumni chapter meeting all the way to the regional convention. All of us run under Robert's Rules of Order. The rules are in place where constitutional laws are not established in most cases. So a typical argument I will hear is that, oh, but Robert says this. But if your constitution and bylaws says something different, they take precedent over Robert's Rules of Order, right? These rules are established so that meetings can be fair and proper, and all members can feel like they have an opportunity to participate. The latest version of Robert's Rules of Order is the 12th edition, and on your screen you'll see what the book looks like. It has a white cover, and basically what's changed in here is talk more about virtual meetings and how you get those in your rules and regulations and bylaws, and how you're supposed to activate those regular virtual meetings. And that came out of that COVID response. So, first question, brothers, is that when you approach and you obtain the floor, which is the right to speak, I noticed that brothers think that you automatically have the right to speak because you stood up. No, you first have to be recognized by the chair. Are there any chapter presidents on the call? Chapter presidents, if you could raise your hand in the participants, if you could raise your hand if you're a chapter president, if you're on the call. I see Brother Johnson, you're off mute. Did you have a question?
No, I'm just raising my hand.
So Brother Johnson, since you got your hand raised, I'm gonna ask you a question. In your chapter meeting, how many brothers typically are in your chapter meeting? You're on mute. Yep, I can hear you now. How many brothers typically
Okay.
come to your chapter meeting?
Right now, we'll have like 10 to 12.
10 to 12. So you probably have more casual chapter meeting, not as formal, correct?
Right. Well, we use parliamentary procedure, of course, for the important matters, receiving reports. And there are occasions when we've had some dispute, but we definitely use Robert's rules. And we don't have rules that supersede Robert's rules at this moment.
Correct. And I think the big part that you want to get out of this is that raising your hand means nothing. Standing while another person has the floor is actually out of order. And you as the chair must recognize a brother before he speaks, right? A lot of times brothers just want to stand up and start talking, but you can't accept them until they're recognized. Debate doesn't begin until the chair has stated a motion or resolution and ask, are you ready for the question? Or is there debate? If no one rises, then the chair calls for the vote, right? So typically a good habit I do is that after a motion has been stated, are you ready for the question? I'll say it twice. If no one stands up or no one raises their hands, I move to the vote on the motion, all right? Before the motion is stated by the chair, members may suggest modifications to the motion. So we'll talk about a situation later, but until the chair states the motion, it is the property of the maker of the motion. So that's when you can make your friendly amendments and different things of that nature. But once the chair of the meeting states the motion, that is property of the floor. It's no longer the property of the person that made the motion. And what does that mean? That means that it only can be amended through formal processes. Friendly amendments no longer apply, and I'll talk more about that later on. Any questions, brothers?
Yes, brother. So in order for a motion to move forward, and I'm just putting this out there generally, in order for a motion to move forward, as stated, it has to be, the chair has to, is it the chair, not the chair, the presiding officer or the secretary that needs to, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm sorry.
State the motion?
No, that needs to repeat the motion so that everybody.
The chair must do
does that. Okay.
The chair must do it. Sometimes you can ask the secretary, because if it gets convoluted, you can ask the secretary to assist you, but the chair must always state the motion.
Okay, thank you, brother.
Okay. Okay, so immediately pending questions. So these are the last questions stated by the chair. So it's, so if you, someone's, in alpha, so this is what we typically do in alpha, brother Foxworth, is that we'll be in a meeting, we'll be in a convention, and something goes wrong. And so we'll be like, move previous question, right? That doesn't close debate. That does not close debate. When someone makes a motion to move the previous question or and gets a second, a non-debatable item comes up where we're going to vote whether we're going to close debate. Saying that move the previous question does not close debate. It only allows, it's a motion to be decided if we're going to continue debate on a matter. No member, and I know this is funny for alphas, but no member can speak twice on the same issue until everyone else has spoken on it. So a lot of times you'll see a brother want to stand up and talk 4 or 5 times about an issue that they are very passionate about. They can only speak twice, and only if the chair allows more than two for you to speak twice on the same issue. Key thing is that all remarks must go through the chair. Why is that? So I don't know. So I know that the brothers in Jersey are peaceful. Y'all don't have hardcore meetings, right? But in some chapters, in some districts, brothers like to go personal. And I'll be honest with you. A lot of times when I come into a meeting, sometimes I don't know 2 brothers are beefing. They might have a personal issue, something may have come up, someone may have said something, and so you're sitting there as the chair, Brother Tillman, you're sitting there as the chair and you're wondering, well, what's going on, right? Because there seems like they're attacking each other about this topic. So a topic might be about a party, right? And they'll straight get into a big fight about which cups we should use, the black or the gold cups. and it's an internal issue that's peeling out into an external motion. And so what I would tell someone like Brother Dow is say, hey, Brother Dow, you as the chair need to make sure that all the conversations are going through you and not between the two brothers, because that puts the personalities away and allows for us to address the issue directly. And the agenda and all committee reports are really just recommendations. When the motion is stated and debate begins and changes, that's when changes can occur, right? So anything that you receive from a committee, the agenda itself, all of that is just suggestions until there's a motion to adopt, and then you can change it upon it. Any questions about that, brothers? So things to consider. I'm not going to go over all of these, but I just want to kind of highlight the big ones. Points of personal privilege. So brothers like to say this, points of personal privilege. Point of personal privilege does not give you the right to speak in front of another brother. A point of personal privilege pertains to noise, personal comfort, things that are pertinent to you that do not have to deal with the order of information, order that's being dealt with on the floor. So if a room is too cold, if someone is smoking in the room, that's a point of personal privilege. A point of personal privilege does not give you the right to speak on a question. Orders of the day is a call from the floor to tell the chair that you need to go back to the agenda. Sometimes in Alpha, we'll be in the meeting and things will just get all over the place and we'll forget where we are. It is the right of the floor, someone on the floor, to call for orders of the day so that we can get back to the agenda. Main motions brings business before the assembly. And dividing the question divides motion to two or more separate motions and must be able to stand on their own. So and things like amending is inserting or striking out words or paragraphs or substituting whole paragraphs. Any questions about that, brothers?
Brother, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but
I can hear you, brother.
Excellent. I have this new setup here. Point of information. By the way, I'm Brother Dexter Williams, State of Psi Lambda. Point of information. When does that apply? You said you can't interrupt the speaker, or does this allow you to interrupt a speaker?
No, it does not. So you would still be in the same order of recognition. So think of things that can only interrupt the speakers are points of privilege, orders of the day, points of order. Okay. Things that supersede, that affect the whole assembly or affect you immediately personally. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, brothers? Yes, Brother Williams.
Brother Williams has his hand up.
Yep.
Yes. So, Brother Metellus, so if the chair attempts to move on an item that was not previously accepted on the agenda, is the appropriate recourse to interject a point of order that the item that is currently being debated and discussed was not
Correct.
Was not approved on the
agenda.
Okay.
Correct. All right. Thank you, Brother Williams. Some more points to be considered. Lay on the table. Lay on the table does not kill a motion. You use lay on the table to suspend further considerations of a motion to pick up something else that has come before you. So a perfect example of something, if you have a motion on the floor to spend $1,500 on a program, and then you have a guest speaker show up in the middle of that motion, but that guest speaker only has 5 minutes, you can lay it on the table so that you can hear from the guest speaker, right? And then you could pick it up, take from the table after the speaker has left, if that makes sense. Laying on the table does not kill it. If you want to kill something, what you do is you make a motion to postpone indefinitely. All right? So yes, Brother Johnson.
Yes. So there's some motions, of course, that require 2/3, as laying on the table, a simple majority vote.
Simple majority, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You can appeal decisions of the chair, which happens a lot in alpha, right? So a chair may make a constitutional ruling, may make a ruling on a motion, and the body always has the right to appeal the decision of the chair. So what happens is that someone can stand up and say, I appeal the decision of the chair, and it requires a second. And then what you will do in this typical fashion, what you will do is you'll actually do the opposite of what you would think you would be doing on that motion. So what happens is that we will take a vote on the appeal of decision of the chair. Those that are voting in the affirmative are actually endorsing what the chair decided. Those voting in the negative are going against the ruling of the chair. So I guess I'm going to throw a question out there. Let's say the negatives have it, the no's have it, right? And they go against the ruling of the chair. What's the next step? Does anyone have an idea? So I'm the chairman. I've made a ruling that our Constitution says that $150 is due, and the Constitution says that it's $150 plus $5 late fee, right? And I said, well, I still think it's $150, and I ruled that way, and the floor said that no, you're wrong. What's the next step?
Would it go to debate?
It could go back to debate, right? In this situation, I gave you two clear outcomes, right? The outcome was either you were going to support 150 or you're going to support 150 plus the $5. But in those things that are not clear, you go into debate, and then the floor will make a decision about what's the ultimate ruling of the body. Okay. So we could commit and refer to committee, and we're going to talk about committees in a little bit. I like to refer things to committee or recommit things to committee, because a lot of times in chapters, especially small ones, I've been in small and large chapters, what happens is that we try to do committee work during the chapter meeting, and that just makes your meeting go so much longer, all right? Because we're debating, like, I literally do not want to debate, Brother Bell, I literally do not want to debate how much alcohol we're going to purchase, right? I'm not going to debate you on that. I'm not going to debate the, how many extra large t-shirts we should have versus medium t-shirts, right? So, Brother Mungo, I don't want to debate those things. Those are committee works, right? So I'm going to refer those to committee to come back to the membership with the recommendations. Any questions? So, Brother Foxworth, you had a question? Go ahead, Brother Foxworth.
Brother Foxworth, after Theta Lambert. I'm kind of confused about committee.
Yep.
What power does a committee have to?
And we're gonna cover that in about 5 minutes, Brother Foxworth. We're in depth. So, Brother Foxworth, I'm gonna give you all the things that you ever wanted to know about committees, according to Roberts. So this is one of my favorite cartoons. And the vote was to have a unanimous consensus passed 5-2. Right? So a lot of times in Roberts is we're not understanding what we're voting on. And so it's very important as the chair that you not only explain what the brothers are voting on, but they actually understand, right? If something is unanimous, you don't need to take a vote, right? If you have unanimous consent, you don't need to take a vote, right? If it passed 5-2, that's not unanimous consent, right? So things like that is that the chair, you have to be clear, right? So as the chair of this meeting, he needs to be clear that we have unanimous consent. If there's no debate, right? So typically a chair will say, is there unanimous consent? And he'll wait for about a minute, about 30 seconds. And if no one says anything, then the motion is adopted without debate, right? But it only one person, even at a convention of 500 delegates or 1,000 delegates, if one person raises their hand, you have to carry through the regular motion. You have to go through this. You have to go through debate and everything else like that. Common mistakes. All motions must be stated as, Brother Chair, I move. Not, I like to make a motion, right? I like to have a steak dinner every night, but I can't, right? You know, you must say I move. Okay, because when you say I like to make a motion, you're not making a motion, but you say, Brother Chair, I move. There's no discussion of the report until a motion is made to adopt the report, or if it's information purposes only, until the report has concluded. Brother Johnson, I see you raise your hand.
Yes, I didn't even introduce myself. Alfred Johnson at ZEL, Zeta. So the statement that often expresses through that is just so moved. So the chair could say, or someone could make a suggestion. And so I guess the question is, when is it appropriate to say so moved?
So if so move is actually not in Roberts, it's extremely informal, right?
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's extremely informal, right? The proper formal way is I move, right?
Okay.
But I want to kind of talk to things about things that are common practice, right? So it's common practice things are, Roberts talks about common practice. Common practice there are things that are improper in their nature, but an organization may do it until someone disputes it, right? So I move, or so for the I move, it's just like you said, that may be common practice, right? And that's fine, right? That may be a common practice of the organization. But once the moment someone stands up and says that's improper, then you must fall into the formal motions of Roberts. Does that make sense, Brother Johnson?
Sure. Yes, indeed.
In determining the results of a vote, what constitutes a majority? The word majority, and I have to read this verbatim. The word majority in this context means more than half. More than half. Because sometimes we like to use 50% plus one. It's apt to cause problems. If there are 13 brothers on the call or on a meeting and you're all voting, you need 7 to pass something. Now, what's 50% of 13? 6.5, right? Right? And then it's plus 1 makes 7.5. And in math, you round it up. So you actually make it, you need 8 votes. You see how that becomes a problem? Think about, I want to do that math again. A majority of 13 is 7. If I say it's 50% plus 1, it becomes 6.5 plus 1, which is 7.5, and I then must round it up to 8, right? See how that might cause confusion? Because there's no such thing as a half person in Roberts. Everybody is a full vote. So therefore, you have to round it up to the next number. So even if so here's a great thing that you should all know. Even if that number was 7.25, you still need to round it up to 8 because you need a full vote person, right? So that's why we say more than half versus a percentage plus 1. Any questions about that? Because I know sometimes brothers get lost in that. Okay. Dealing with a friendly amendment. So according to Roberts, there's no such thing as a friendly amendment. Sometimes brothers will stand up and say, I want to make a friendly amendment to the motion. Once the motion, like I said earlier, once it has been stated by the chair, it's no longer the property of the mover. The assembly, by amendment, can adopt or reject a motion to amend. And sometimes you don't even need to do a vote, right? So it may make just great common sense, right? So a motion might come from the floor and there might be an amendment to it after the chair has stated it. So it might be like, oh, by the way, we forgot to put this word or this sentence, right? And you could just say as the chair, oh, that's actually true. Brothers, then the person makes the motion to adopt it. Brothers, is there a common consent on this? And then you just made the friendly amendment, right? But once the chair has stated it, it's no longer your motion. However, I want to just kind of make this clear. Because you're the person that made the motion, you do get to speak on the motion first if you so choose. You have a privileged position as the maker of the motion to speak on it first. Now, my question, a pop quiz is, does the seconder have that same privilege?
I would say no.
Yeah, and you would be correct. The seconder, the only thing the seconder is doing is that he feels that the motion is worthy to bring up for debate. He is not saying whether he supports the motion or he's against the motion. He would just like to bring it to debate. Okay, that is the role of the seconder, and that's why you don't need to record who seconds the motion in your minutes.
Hmm.
Okay, all you need to do is record who made the motion and it was seconded.
Okay, for that, and maybe I'm thinking about it too much, but it always seems when we're at conventions, they always say who seconded.
Yeah, that's common practice for us, right? That's common practice, but it's not necessary.
It's not necessary. Okay, understood. Thank you.
Right? That's our common practice because we in Alpha because it's just the way we're. So how would I say this, brother district director? We're just very distrustful of the general of our leadership for various reasons throughout the history, not just recently, but this is going all the way back to 1906. We always want to know who did what, and that's why we do that. Brother Williams?
Yes, so to that point, so if it's been moved and properly seconded, and if the motion, for instance, was something that conflicted with the Constitution, because it's been seconded, it then has to go the course, it can't just be rescinded, correct?
So there's two things that can be done. You can go the course, or you as the chair, knowing the Constitution and Robert's rules, say that it's out of order.
Okay.
Okay. And then, like I said, the body has the right to appeal that decision, but if it's out of order, it's out of order. All right. Abstentions. Another big misinterpretation in Alpha. Abstentions is just your right to refuse to vote. You cannot force a brother to vote, right? But it is not a no vote in most instances. So let's step back to that 13-person example I gave before. There are 13 brothers in the room. 11 vote. 6 vote in favor, 5 against, 2 don't vote at all. Did the motion pass? So I will take a survey. Raise your hand in the Zoom if you felt like the motion passed.
Give that one more time, brother.
So there are 13 brothers in the room.
Mhm.
It's a simple majority thing, a majority that you need. 6 voted yes, 5 voted no, and 2 did not vote at all. Did the motion pass? Raise your hand if you believe the motion passed. And those of you that, like, you can lower your hands now, and those of you that raise your hands, you are correct. The motion did pass because abstentions are not counted towards the total vote. The total vote is just who voted, right? So if one brother just voted on it and everybody else sat on their hands, the motion passed, right? So now there is a few instances where it does matter, when abstentions do matter. And I always give this example as the intake example. The Constitution of the fraternity says that a candidate must receive I believe it's 2/3 or 3/4. Whatever it is, I believe it's 3/4. 3/4 of the brothers present at a called meeting. 3/4 of the brothers present at a called meeting. So here's the next question. Based on that, we're at IMDP. There are 100 brothers in the room. 100, so it's a flat 100. So this should be real simple. 72 vote yes for the candidate. 15 vote no for the candidate. And everybody else abstains. Did the candidate get into the organization? For those of you that, so those go in the chat. Go into the chat. Those of you that believe the candidate got in, say yes. Those of you that believe the candidate did not get in, say no. And the correct answer is no, the candidate did not get it because he needed 75 brothers. By 3/4, he needed 75 brothers to vote in the affirmative because the Constitution is clear. Brothers present, not present in voting, present. And that's a very big difference, right? Any questions about that? Because I know that sometimes we get the two conflated. An abstention vote is just a refusal to vote. It only matters when present is the benchmark for the vote.
Brother Metellus, quick question. So
Yeah.
That kind of goes back to when you said, this is Derek Retrice, Zeta Mu Lambda.
Hey, bro, how are you?
That goes back to when you said that the standing orders of the organization overrules Robert rules.
Correct.
Got it.
But that's our Constitution. It's in our Constitution and bylaws. It specifically says 3/4 needed if brothers in the affirmative at a properly called meeting. Hey, Brother Johnson, go ahead.
No, I was just amening on that. And I think that's an important point. We cannot do anything that goes against the Constitution, no matter what. So that's always out of order, then I would assume, if anybody makes that kind of a motion.
Correct. But you know, when it comes to IMDP, your brothers get very emotional, Brother Johnson.
Yeah.
We want to be like, oh, I don't understand how my candidate didn't get the votes. You know. So preparing for a meeting. Do your chair a favor, especially if it's a district conference, but even at a chapter meeting. Send your report to your chair 3 days prior to the meetings. It may not seem like a big deal, but it's extremely important. Why? Because I, as a chair, don't like surprises. Surprises make your meetings go long. Even if it's bad news, I can better prepare for the bad news as the chair than have people kind of jump in at the last second and say, oh, I want to add, no. I need to see it so I'm prepared. Even if I disagree with it, at least I'm prepared for it, right? Send notice of your meetings through multiple media. And when I mean multiple media, don't assume that you have brothers that have access to email or text messages. Give a brother a call, and sometimes you may even want to mail them an agenda if you have a senior brother, right? At your executive board meetings, discuss any issues outside of the meeting. So prepare yourself at the executive board meeting for the chapter. That is the purpose of the executive board meeting, to address issues between meetings. Always reach out to the 7 random brothers, if that's the size, if your chapter size allows it, just to see what's going on, right? You don't have to do it as the chair, but you may want your vice president to do that. I always say that's a good thing for the vice president to do. When you get to know the brothers at 2, just reach out to the brothers, see what's going on, because sometimes there are issues that you don't know about. Time limits are very important, brothers, on the reports. I tell my chairman, you got 3 minutes, unless it's the financial report, because you brothers need to know what's going on with your money. And then go through, and then make sure you have time outside the chapter meeting, because sometimes that's the only time brothers have is really at the chapter meeting, and that causes meetings to go long too. So you want to have things outside of your chapter meeting so brothers can socialize. Any questions about that, brothers? Always have your minutes pre-printed. And once you have quorum, start promptly. Very important. Do not read your report verbatim. Here's something I know about Alpha Phi Alpha. All of you at least went to college, right? So you all fundamentally should be able to read. I shouldn't have to read the details of my reports to you. You as a brother should be reading those reports. And then when you get those reports, you should be able to just summarize them if you're reporting out. Hey brothers, this is the fundraising committee. You see our report in the packet. We are recommending that we have the party on this day because of A, B, C, and D. Brother Chair, I move that you adopt the report of the fundraising committee. I move that we adopt the report coming from the fundraising committee, and then you move on to the next step, right? A lot of times we spend a lot of time going through the formality of reading an entire report. We don't need to do that. As the chair, be fair and unbiased on all issues. The greatest compliment my wife ever gave me Brother Tillman, my wife don't give out a lot of compliments to me, right? But the Brother Dow knows that too. But you know, my wife don't give out a lot of compliments to me. But one of the greatest compliments she ever gave to me, she's like, I'm one of the most unbiased people that she knows. I always try to, I don't rule in favor of personalities. I rule in favor of what the rules are, and whether I agree or disagree with them is irrelevant. And there are a lot of things I disagree with in Alpha, but you never hear me say, I'm going against the rules of Alpha, you know, because that's how I feel. I think that, you know, when you're a chair, you need to have that same kind of attitude. Any questions about that?
Brother,
Yes, brother.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Quick question on that. It doesn't happen in New Jersey, but the concern I have with that is brothers in other states don't read before they get into the meeting, and can that affect the vote?
Oh, it definitely can.
And is that okay? Or I guess that's why a lot of brothers, you know, go too far with the committee reports, because the assumption is people are not reading before going to meetings.
So Black men don't like negative reinforcement, right? But negative reinforcement also gets us to do things. When I, as the chair, say to for the first time, when you're going into a long debate, brother chair, and I say, brother, did you read the report? Brothers getting their feelings initially, like, oh, he's trying to call me out. But I'll tell you what, they come to that next meeting, they read that report. Because brothers don't like public embarrassment, right? And I hate negative reinforcement, but sometimes as alphas, that's the only way we seem to respond, and I don't know why. Maybe it's the nature of fraternity, but we only respond to negative reinforcement. I don't know why.
Brother, quick question.
Yep.
If a report is not if it's not a written report, it's just being spoken on, should that be accepted?
It depends on you as a chair if you're willing to entertain it even to begin with, right? So things happen, right? I'm not trying to be cruel and unusual, right? Things happen. Dog might have eaten your report, things might have happened, right? You got to be flexible, but you got to say, is this something that needs to be immediately addressed?
Okay.
Right? If it doesn't, brother, you got to wait till the next meeting. If it needs to be addressed currently, then you have to be transparent with the brothers and say, I don't have a written report, but I'm allowing this brother to present because we need to deal with this immediately. However, moving forward, I'm expecting a written report.
Thank you.
All right, brothers, we're almost there. We'll talk about committees. Yes, Brother Williams.
Just quickly to that point. So would your recommended best practice be, particularly where there's a report that involves finances and the disbursement of funds, should, and like you said, unless it is something that is time sensitive, should you definitely require that as it should be married with appropriate expenses from the treasurer?
So I'm going to be super technical, and then I'm going to explain to you what alpha's like, right? When you're talking about financial reports, technically, all you need to do is the treasurers come up, give 3 numbers: the beginning balance from the previous report, all your total expenses, and then the ending balance, right? That's it. You don't need to you could give that verbally too. In January, we had $10,000. We spent $4,000 in March. $6,000 is the remaining balance as of Saturday, right? Because technically, it's not the treasurer's responsibility. I'll even add a number in there. And we had 1,000 inflow. So we had 1,000 received revenue. That's $1,000 received revenue. Balance is $7,000, right? Those inflows are actually the responsibility of the financial secretary. The financial secretary should be giving you the details of the inflows. Okay.
I'm responding more. I'm talking about more of if I'm a committee chair,
Mhm.
and part of my report requires the chapter to dispense funds.
Yeah, you can still make that motion. Is it unbudgeted? First, the question is it unbudgeted? If it's budgeted, you don't need to make a motion to spend money that the body has already adopted through the budgetary process.
Okay.
If it's unbudgeted, then you do need to make a motion. Okay.
Yep.
Some good meeting habits. Understand that each brother matters, and they really do. I don't mean that and that's hyperbole. You know, Brother DD will tell you, I love hanging out with bros because each bro matters to me. I love hanging out with Brother Agnew. I love hanging out with all the brothers, right? Because it's not just, it's more than a job. So you want each brother to know that they do matter, regardless if they just became financial or they're not financial. They matter, right? Give compliments to membership for successful programming. Anything I did as a chapter president, as an alpha advisor, as an area director, district director, regional vice president, general organization parliamentarian, had nothing to do with me. It had to do all of us, right? And so you always want to compliment everybody about the success because nothing, this is not a one-man show. Alpha is not a one-man show and never will be, never has been. Be open to criticism. And this is, you know, after the meeting, it's okay to take some criticism, but it should be constructive. And how do you tell the difference between constructive criticism and just criticism for criticism's sake? A good brother criticizes and provides a direction on how to improve it. A criticizer just criticizes and doesn't help you at all. And know your membership. Kappa Theta Lambda is not Delta Iota. Alpha Alpha Lambda is not Zeta Nu Lambda, right? You got to know your chapter. You got to know the brothers in your chapter. You got to know the personalities. Committees. Now, I'm not going to read the whole definition because we have 10 minutes left, but I want you to, when you get this, I want you to kind of digest this. There are two distinct classes of committee: boards of directors or managers, board of trustees, you know that about the church, executive committees, etc. And there are ordinary committees, which we'll cover in this presentation. Special or standing, and committee of the whole or its substitutes. Committees are special or standing are committees that are appointed by the chapter, district, or appointing authority for the purpose of doing preliminary work. What could be another appointing authority? Your chapter bylaws. Your chapter bylaws state who your standing committees are, and they give that authority to those committees to do certain things. The committee only gives recommendations to the governing body. The committee does not make any decisions unless the bylaws give them the authority to make that decision. Even if the chapter president puts together a special committee, he cannot delegate any authority to that committee. He can only tell the committee to report back to a governing authority, whether it be the chapter president, the chapter office, the district board, or the chapter board, or the board, or the chapter meeting, or the district conference. The committee cannot do anything unless the bylaws specifically state they have the authority to do that. And I want to be clear about that. Committees make recommendations. They don't make decisions. Questions? So you see some of the things they can do, right? I want to focus. Yep, Brother Foxworth. You're on mute, Brother Foxworth.
Yes, I'm going back to my original question concerning the committee. Now, you just stated that committee is formed by the body. The president has no authority to form a committee, and if he has authority to form the committee, does the committee make a recommendation to him or to the body?
So it depends, right? So if a committee is formed by the president, if the bylaws of your organization give them the authority to form a committee, give the president the appointing authority to form special committees, right? The special committee, so it could be a specific task, right? That I don't want the chapter to know about. So I, as the president, could put together a special committee for the purposes of celebrating a certain brother or group of brothers, right? And I'm going to expense it out myself, but I need the committee to do the work, right? The committee can report back to me because that is my charge that I'm taking on personally, right? However, if there are things that affects the chapter, meaning that we're going to spend chapter funds or we're going to use chapter resources, the committee must report back to the either through the executive board or directly to the chapter. Does that make sense, Brother Foxworth? Okay. Number 2, as directed, the governing body committee chairman shall advise officers and other committees of actions they should take. Remember, the key word is advise. So if you're the budget committee and the fundraising committee wants to have a party, the budget committee should advise them about how much they should spend, but they shouldn't tell them how much they're going to spend. There's a big difference between the two. How do committees operate? It is the duty of the chairman to call the committee together. However, a committee meeting can be called by any 2 committee members. Only 2. Any 2 committee members can call a committee meeting together if the chair does not. A majority of the committee shall be quorum for all committees unless your bylaws say different. Members of the organization have a right to appear at committee meetings and present their views but during their deliberations, they cannot be present. So if you're not on that committee, you can't speak. You can speak to that committee, but you can't be part of the deliberations. Committee meetings are informal. A voted majority means that it is the support of the entire committee. So the committee may vote 5/4 to do something. That means the whole committee supports it. Any questions? All right, hearing none. Question? When a committee submits a report, it should always be in writing and written in the third person. So I'm a big wrestling fan, right? WWE fan, right? So if you want to think about what third person sound like, watch some promo videos of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He always used to speak in the third person, right? Right. Subcommittees can be created from committees, right? So perfect example. Let's say you're having a gala, right? You may need a decoration subcommittee from the gala committee. They report back to the committee, but they do not report back to the governing body. Subcommittees report back to the committee, but not to the governing committee. Standing committees must report as per their constitution and bylaws when they're required to report. So a perfect example of a standing committee is the nominating and elections committee. They should be a standing committee, but you don't need to hear from them every meeting, right? You should only hear from them at the appropriate times. We talk about this. The committee chair should submit it in writing to the chair and the secretary, so both of them should get a copy of your report. And then you move for the adoption or acceptance of your report. A common error, after a report has been read and received, sorry, hold on one second, brothers. Another mistake, whereas the fact that it has already been read shows that it's already been received by the assembly. You don't need to receive a report once you've submitted it. You don't need to make a motion to receive it. The more dangerous part is to vote for the report to be accepted, which is the equivalent of adopting everything in that report as fact, right? So a committee may come before you and just give you information. They'll say, have a committee report and say the best looking girls are in DC, the best liquor is in this store. We found that this is this, and we found this is the breaking point for go to high school, go to college. That's just information, right? But if you adopt it, you're saying that that's fact. You are saying the best looking women are in DC. You are saying this place has the best alcohol. So you want to be careful about what you accept from your report formally. And this talks more about that, so you can look at this more in depth when I send this to Brother District Director. If the report contains recommendations not in the form of motions, they should be placed at the end of the report. The proper motion is to adopt the recommendations, right? If it's a series of resolutions, The proper is to move the resolutions or resolutions be adopted or agreed to. So when you're giving a report, whether you have a recommendation or an adoption, it has to be clear to the body. So it should be at the end of your report so the body knows exactly what they're adopting. Make sense to everybody? Because a lot of times we'll always say the devil's in the details. Sometimes brothers stick recommendations in the middle of the report, and then it gets lost in all of it. You want to be clear, so you need it on the bottom so that brothers understand what they're voting for. So brothers, that's my report. It's always good to see the brothers of Jersey. This is an old picture of me at the Jersey District Conference before COVID.
I took that picture, so just so brothers know.
But brothers, are there any general questions about what you've learned today? And did you find this useful, Brother Williams?
And this could be a chapter centric common practice, but what is your stance on for the good of the order? I've been in chapters that have suspended Robert's Rules of Order for the good of the order. Is that something
You don't need to.
that
You don't
okay.
need to. You just place it on the agenda. Typically, my chapters that I belong to, we put it at the end of the agenda, right? Just making an agenda item. I think it helps chapters. It helps build camaraderie and fellowship amongst the brothers.
I stated that point because with some chapters use that as a moment to be very, very candid, and I guess sometimes the language can, I don't want to say not be alpha appropriate. So should that, how would you manage that?
So I'll give you a perfect example. The purpose of the good of the order is to give good news or information about concerns personally. Issues of chapter business should be on the agenda as a separate item, right? So if a brother wants to talk about, parties and things that he's been doing in his spare time, that's fine under good of the order. But being that it's still a chapter meeting, his decorum should match that of a chapter meeting. He shouldn't be using profanity. He shouldn't be doing, you get what I mean, brother? If it makes sense.
Yep, absolutely. I just wanted to hear some clarity on that. Yep, that makes perfect sense.
All right. Any other questions, brothers?
Yeah, Brother Dexter Williams, Theta Psi Lambda. Can you give examples of which reports should be accepted and which reports should be presented as for informational purposes only?
So reports that are informational purposes only are typically the treasurer's report. The treasurer's reports you do not adopt at any time. Okay. The reason you don't do that is because you're not going to accept it as fact until you get the report of the audit committee. The final report of the audit committee verifies what the treasurer has done is true and proper. Okay. A report that's accepted is that a report of a working committee. So a committee, so a perfect example like the gala committee. You have a gala 8 months in advance, right? And it's an ongoing set of reports that you're just accepting. You're just accepting, right? So we started negotiating on the spot. Boom, chapter voted on this, and then it's a moving kind of thing. Does that make sense, brother?
So, like for the gala report, would you actually move to accept it, or you just hear it?
You just hear it.
Okay.
But someone can move to accept it as well. Okay.
Understood.
Brother Feast. I saw Brother Feast and then Brother Johnson and Brother Williams.
No, my hand isn't up.
Okay. Brother Johnson.
Yes, I believe it's a common practice for committees to make a report that do not require really motion and second, quote unquote, the report is before you kind of thing, and then some action happens. Correct.
So the correct way to do it is the chairman of the committee must formally move to adopt it, but it does not require a second because it's coming from committee. It's already assumed that there's someone else that wants to hear it. Okay.
Yeah, and if you take a minute to go through, though it doesn't happen often, it can become sticky. Go through the substitute motion steps.
So there's a motion on the floor, right? So let's make a motion. I move that we spend $5,000 on go to high school, go to college in the fraternal year 2022-2023, right? Gets a second, right? It's debated. Then there's a substitute that comes in. A substitute motion is I move a substitute motion to insert the following language. Or I'm sorry, to strike and insert the following language. That $5,000 be allocated for a voteless people is a hopeless people. A substitute motion changes the dynamic of the main motion, right? Whereas an amended motion doesn't change the dynamic of the main motion. It just adds or takes away from it. But we're still on the topic. So an example of amended motion would be, I move that we strike 5,000 and insert 4,000 for go to high school, go to college. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Brother Williams?
Yes, is a motion needed to adjourn?
No.
No, but you can always make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Well, isn't according to Robert Rules of Order, you don't need a motion to adjourn because you are at the end of the
Your agenda. Right, but anyone can make them, you can move at any time during a meeting to adjourn.
Okay.
So you could start a meeting and you can move to adjourn it. Now, doesn't mean you're gonna get the votes, but you can always move to adjourn the meeting as long as there is no business pending on the floor. Okay? Brother Tom, did you have something?
Yeah, Brother Tom, Capital Lambda. Is the chair a voting member if there's a motion on the floor that needs a vote?
So this is very interesting. So in most motions, no. In ballots, where there's a secret ballot like elections, he has every right to vote, right? The chair may also vote for two reasons. The chair may vote on motions in order to cause a tie, whereas the motion would fail, or to break a tie. Do you understand, Brother Tom?
Yeah, I understand. So it's an option.
No, he can only vote if his vote would either cause a tie or break a tie.
Got it.
So typically what happens when a tie occurs on the floor, brothers automatically assume the chair needs to take a vote. The chair doesn't need to vote at all. The chair can just be like, the motion failed because it was 50-50.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And the second thing is, if the chair determines a motion is out of order and no one challenges it, it's just out of order. It fails.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem. Any last questions, brothers? I don't want to keep you past your bedtime.
I'd just like to state that, Brother Metellus, you've done an outstanding job. You've done this for years. And I just want to state that I really appreciate the quality service you provide to this organization.
And I appreciate that, Brother Feast. I really do, especially coming from you. You know, I really do appreciate that. Brothers, let me know if you found this workshop useful. You know, it's definitely give me feedback about things, you know, that you would like to hear or things that can make it better. You know, because this is about, you know, providing the best services for your brothers in the district.
No, brother, I definitely thank you very much. It was very helpful for me. I definitely learned a couple of new things that I actually had, vice versa. So again, I do thank you for your time and, as always, your commitment, you know, to helping me out when I've always asked. But I am pretty sure that each and every brother that was on the call truly, you know, enjoyed it, and they are appreciative for you taking your time out of your busy schedule to do it.
No, and thank you, brothers, for having me. Like I said, I'll be sending this to you, Brother McLucas, in the next 5 minutes or so.
Okay.
So that's where you can share with the brothers in your district. Brothers, if you want some more knowledge, you can log on to Alpha University. If you log into Alpha MX, there's a link for Alpha University. There are a lot of workshops that are already up there as well. I just wanted to share it as a free plug. We have a couple of history sessions there too, that are specifically deeper dives into Alpha history and some other things as well. So if you go and log into Alpha MX, you'll see a link for Alpha University on the panel, top panel. Go log in there and you'll be able to register for a lot of training around a lot of different items. So I definitely recommend you do that.
Again, thank you, brother. I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you so
No
much.
problem. All right, brothers, I'm going to turn it back over to your district director.
Well, brothers, thank everyone for joining. I truly hope that everybody enjoyed the experience and at least learned something. These are things that I want to have more of as a district so that we can engage one another on things that we don't know to get a better understanding about Alpha, about how to run our chapters and things of that nature. So again, for everybody that joined, I thank you very much. And again, I just want to apologize for the difficulties that I had earlier. It will not happen again. I think I got everything figured out. So again, brothers, thank you very much for your time this evening. And does anyone have any questions for me? Okay, seeing none and hearing none. Again, brothers, I'll return the rest of your evening back to you, and enjoy the rest of your evening with your families.
Thank you, brother.
Good night, everyone.
Same to you.
06, bros.
Take care.
6.
06, 06.